I'm the founder and artistic director of Opera Cecilia, as you already know.
This is yours truly, the executive producer of Opera Cecilia.
And as you know, we're husband and wife, and sometimes we like to do videos together. Sometimes Tanis does videos while I am otherwise occupied.
Today we will be reacting to The River as sung by AURORA.
This is kind of a continuation of the AURORA series, and it is also a continuation of just our fascination with the beautiful Norwegian artists that we have been doing on this channel. We wanted to do a huge shout out and thank you to all of our Norwegian fans and subscribers. You all have recommended absolutely fantastic videos to us, and more of those recommendations will be coming in the future. This is a particularly close song, as I said before, to both of our hearts, so we naturally knew it was only a matter of time before we did this video. We're gonna dive into a little bit of a nerdy journey with some background research beforehand.
The first article we're going to be digging into is AURORA Wiki. As most of you probably caught on, the song centers around people hiding or holding back their emotions because of the stigma surrounding being open and fearing coming across as being weak. Super applicable, I think, specifically to toxic masculinity and how it affects men of all different backgrounds.
There's actually a little bit of a thread about men showing emotions and like the emotional journey of men, especially in what is typical for Western society.
I think also it's not just a man problem. I think also women and people of all genders experience a sort of shame-based rhetoric when it comes to expressing your emotions, you know?
And I think what's really interesting is actually there was a YouTube user that is subscribed to us that left a really, really interesting comment. You talked about how a lot of people consider AURORA sort of this like ethereal being, or almost as if she's not human. She's been compared to like a lot of mythological creatures. But like what's interesting is the commenter so eloquently put that they don't think that AURORA is inhuman. They think that AURORA is the example of what humanity can be. AURORA as an artist is all about owning up to your own emotions and understanding that the depths of our humanity, or these things that we've oftentimes shamed about our humanity, are actually okay or morally neutral. Kind of cracking the code a little bit of what we believe makes AURORA so effective as an artist. She is strength through softness. She's not strength through hardness or through grandiosity, which is often how we see strength portrayed. She is strength through owning up to every little part of herself that makes her human, and that makes all of us human. And we all have the capacity to be that kind of being, be that version of ourselves. There was another commenter that was like, can you crack the code of why AURORA is so great? Because a lot of people just give their personal opinions. I think that's my best effort to crack the code. She's strength and softness, and that's such an antithesis. That's so opposite from how we see strength regularly portrayed, that it is extremely refreshing for people and healing for people to see it that way.
The song talks about how letting our emotions out into the world proves that we are human, just as you were saying before.
Yeah.
And forms a part of what makes us human, being able to have those feelings and emotions, and how sometimes letting them out can make you feel so much better afterward. Folks, your feelings are valid. Catharsis is so important in your life.
And it's also not just that your feelings are valid, but your feelings are morally neutral. It's our actions based off of our feelings that can eliminate that neutrality. The feelings themselves are nothing to ever be ashamed of. It's quite a happy song, referring to the river. It's been a while since I've had a joyful song, so it feels really nice. It was inspired by something quite sad as I looked at the suicide rates on this planet, and apparently 73% of them were men. And then I thought, why is that the case? Then I realized, obviously, it must be because of the feeling that you can't talk about your emotions and show that you're in pain, because pain is often associated with weakness. But you know, here in my world, it's not. So the song is inspired by something quite sad, but it is also happy, because crying can be such a positive experience, especially afterwards when you really feel a bit lighter. It's about that feeling to let off some steam, as they say here in England, because she was in England when she filmed the video.
As someone who was raised as a male, as someone who identifies as a male, I can definitely say that there is a societal pressure to come off as the toughest guy in the room.
Yeah.
To come off as impervious to feelings. And I definitely went through a phase in my life where I really wanted to ascribe to that. I really tampered down my emotions so much that it was super unhealthy for me. It wasn't until college and getting into different social circles that I really learned to open up and become more of who I ultimately wanted to be at the end of the day.
Once again, it kind of just points to that strength through softness. I know that this was specifically in reference to kind of those male suicide rates, and just talking about how men can have that strength through softness too. And hard versus soft doesn't have to be a masculine versus feminine thing, because we all have a bit of traditional masculinity and a bit of traditional femininity inside of us, you know, and those are just ultimately constructs of all these qualities that makes us human. We don't have to categorize them so much, I guess. Yeah. This is a piece that's from the larger body of work, A Different Kind of Human, which follows on from her other album, Infections of a Different Kind, Step 1. Despite the more expansive sound in the first two singles, this album was recorded in a much smaller space. I feel like there's kind of an effort toward intimacy in that.
Absolutely.
A little bit. The recording of Infections, that other body of work, the first one, was very elaborate, and the location, which was a French chateau, was huge and beautiful and dreamy, and it was far away and you can hear it. But for this record, she says that she's quoted as saying, "I wanted to make it in a very tiny room with a purple floor and dark blue walls, and it was just me and my drummers." This was a very different vibe from the very beginning. It still has like that very ethereal Aurora vibe to it, but it's also increasingly more intimate as time goes on. And I think even with some of her newer works, like Cure for Me and stuff, some of that stuff can seem like it has a grandiosity to it, or like an upbeat pop element to it, or this big orchestration, but it's about such intimate, personal subject matter. The very last thing that we wanted to talk about before we dive into the video in this research section is details on the video's location, because we were stunned by the beautiful scenery in this video. This is one of my favorite videos aesthetically that she's ever done. This was filmed on 2 different farms. It looks like they were both in Kent, England, which I think is around London, or sort of like a sub-district of London, or just outside.
Forgive us, we come from the States.
Yeah, we're from the States, and we've never been to England before. Forgive me if my geography is off. One of them is called Austin Farm, and it was used for the river location, so like all of the scenes where she was in the water or around the water, shallowing, winding part of the river. The river shots were actually filmed first thing in the morning, just a 20-minute drive over to Chalk Farm in Kent, where they shot the remaining outdoor locations, the woodland, the big lake vista shots, the wheat and oilseed rape fields. It's just cool, these 2 like beautiful, beautiful farms with beautiful like vista-like views that greatly contributed to the gorgeousness. The visuals of this video are a huge part of its emotional impact. She literally allows us to go on this emotional journey where she wears it on her sleeves or on her face. From a production standpoint, maybe you can elaborate on this a little bit more. Location is important.
Location, location, location. It's true in real estate.
Yeah.
It's true in theater, in film. Where you are, the setting of your art says a lot about what you want it to say.
We actually recently just experienced that with Orfeo ed Eurydice, which was the very first opera that we filmed with Opera Cecilia, and Tanis did such an amazing job kind of mapping out what he wanted that piece to look like aesthetically when we originally had the idea to film it in a lot of really beautiful natural locations in the Pacific Northwest. In that piece, you're going through different planes of existence or different realms, so we were oscillating between forest landscapes that kind of signified life, or sort of this like Elysium Fields limbo type of feeling, to desert, barren landscapes and cliff edges that felt a little bit more like a hell or like a Hades type of vibe. And then heaven was like the coast and the big vista of the ocean and the serenity of the beach. Natural locations have so much emotional impact on us, and Aurora was a big inspiration for a lot of our aesthetics in that show.
If you want to check out in detail exactly what we did during that filming, check out the link in the description for tickets. They're still live. You can get access to it whenever you want. Once you buy the on-demand version, it's just $5 American.
We also have another performance coming up called Messiah by Candlelight, to where we are producing a virtual film with excerpts of Handel's Messiah with a backdrop of these gorgeous winter wonderland landscapes of the Mount Hood National Forest. We have some amazing nature around here, which is one of the reasons why Tanis and I love living in this region so much. Aurora, when we were looking at her music video aesthetics and how informed by nature they are, it was a huge inspiration for this company. So she's a special artist to us in many different ways. Without further ado, let's get into Aurora's The River.
Hold your hands on to your chest and tell me what you find. Out of you a spiral comes and sees without its eyes. Don't forget who you are even though you are hurt. You are caught in wire and soon it will burst.
That's the very first image where we really start to see the plants coming out of her eyes. That is such a huge thematic strand in this video.
I love looking at water. So initially the first shot going over the water to reveal the cute, I'm going to call it a gazebo. It might not actually be a gazebo. But
I think it is.
It's in the gazebo family at least. That entire landscape was just so peaceful to me. I was thinking, oh, this is a beautiful world that we're into. And the music when it first comes into, it's very mellow. It's very calming. The first time we really get a shot that there's something off in this world is she's holding scissors. Scissors are, I hesitate to say that they're a violent symbol, but they kind of are. Because scissors are always used to divide, to cut, especially associated with the color red. You know there's something going on there.
Red is oftentimes a color that's used not only to convey passion and emotion, but to convey like a foreboding essence.
Danger.
You'll see more red pop up in terms of like passionate and emotional affectations later in the video.
Right.
But for now, we just see little hints of that. What I find really interesting about the symbolism of the scissors too, scissors not only are meant to cut and divide, which I think you really eloquently explained, but when we're kids, we're always told to like, don't run with scissors, you can get hurt. Thinking about other works of hers, particularly the song Through the Eyes of a Child, and those type of works, she is not only talking about how we like to cut and divide emotions away from us or separate ourselves from our emotions in many ways, as if they're cumbersome to our humanity instead of a part of our humanity, but also she's evoking childhood memories of when we were starting to experience boundaries for the very first time.
And in that sense, she's bringing us all towards a common ground.
Yeah.
So that feeds back to how do we break down Aurora and what makes her tick and what really touches us about her. It's the fact that she brings us all together into that vulnerable childlike state in many different
She unites
ways.
us in all of our experiences that we had in our youth, because all of us have had youthful experiences of dealing with defying boundaries, maybe going a little bit too far. What emotions are okay to feel? Am I going to be validated in my emotions in a public sphere? And in an ideal world, we all would be. In an ideal world, we would feel safe to explore those things. But she's bringing us back to that childlike state. It inspires and fosters a desire in us to give those things to the rest of humanity and allow those things again within ourselves because of how nostalgic that is.
It really brings us back to a place where we can kind of process that. It can renew us in that state of mind where we can process some of it. Going back to your first question about the plants coming out of her eyes, I didn't notice it until just now that there's a prior shot of just plants in the corner, separate from her, as a sort of foreshadowing of what's going to happen in the video.
What does art do? Art fosters emotions within us. Art moves us to own up or process emotions that we have. Emotions are tied to plants in this music video, and plants and greenery often symbolize new life. We played a lot with that in Orfeo. And so as a result of that symbolism, what I got from that was that emotions are a part of what makes us feel alive, and she's cutting and dividing those parts that make us feel alive away from her at the beginning of this video as a symbolism for what humanity often does. Musically, what's happening to create that ethereal nature is there's a use of echo and harmonies in the backing vocals that are intentionally...
They're incredibly subtle.
Yeah.
You don't hear them until you start singing along to it in the kitchen, the karaoke version.
Then on top of that, everything is also supposed to convey a feeling of breathlessness. which is why there is an element of echo and escaping air in the music, and intentional escaping air, stylistic. So it's supported, it's a choice, and it's not just something a vocalist is doing because they don't know how to vocalize otherwise. There's a difference.
When we as people hear air escaping through the vocal folds, there's a very visceral reaction we get to it because it approximates whispering. And whispering has very many connotations. I think it's safe to say that if you grew up with parents getting read bedtime stories to you or being told, oh, it's quiet time now, you know, and you get told little stories, it brings you back to that state of childhood.
Or I'm going to tell you a secret.
I'm going to tell you a secret.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
The little elementary school kids that are like whispering things
It's
to each other in the
intimacy.
back of the classroom. Yeah, and that's how close friendships are formed. So it's all about creating an atmosphere of intimacy.
You can cry, blinking your eyes. Do you miss the sadness when it's gone? And you let the river run long high. And you let the river run long high.
Okay, I know you definitely had a visceral reaction when you first
Yes.
saw this, so tell us about that.
I used to demonize crying a lot. I feel like growing up as a man in society, you're taught to suppress your emotions, and as a woman in society or anywhere on the spectrum, you're also, even if you're not like specifically male identifying, you still have like an emotional suppression, or there's still a shame in those emotions. And so for me, it was on the other side where it wasn't that I was suppressing them in order to look strong, but it's that I already felt like as a woman I was considered weaker in society, so in order to convey strength, I couldn't show any signs of weakness, and femininity equaled weakness, and crying is often associated falsely, in my opinion, with femininity. I always viewed crying or vulnerability as a sense of weakness in my life, and I've always been a very ambitious individual, so when I saw this video, it just reminded me that like crying, as she was quoted as saying before, can actually be a good thing. Through this video and through other art that I was consuming at the time that kind of had similar themes, I just came to this conclusion that sometimes a good cathartic cry is just a beautiful part of being a human being, and it's okay if it needs to happen. An emotion just because it might make you a little bit uncomfortable at first.
To me, I wear glasses, so when I see her bringing the scissors so close to her eyes, I have a hard time putting contacts in. Creating a visceral,
that's scary too.
A visceral reaction. I think it's supposed to. It's supposed to make you cringe, being like, what are you doing to yourself? You know, bringing those scissors so close, even though you want to cut the thing that you don't want out of there, there's so much danger in doing that action. Yeah. Not just physically the scissors, but also what the metaphor stands for. Cutting away your emotions and not letting yourself feel them, not letting yourself grow into that.
Is it really weird that like every once in a while I get like vague references to like the movie Us running in my brain, and you know how you have that like thematic, that's a very different
I think Jordan
use of
Peele
scissors.
did a very good job of associating that with scissors for us.
But at the same, but like the idea of like the tethered, and how there's like an alternate part of ourselves that is systemically oppressed versus the non-oppressed part of ourselves that's going about in the world and is able to be the face for us. Duality of identity that we both have inside of us. We have those things that we're afraid of talking about, that we're afraid of admitting to, that we don't want to show to the public, and so we put out this hard outer exterior, and that's the part of us that's allowed to exist. I think that you could draw some parallels between those two. If you are a horror movie buff and you haven't seen Jordan Peele's Us, it's very scary, but we highly recommend it. It has a little bit of similar symbolism, but obviously it talks a little bit more about the class system, I think, than this does necessarily. But I couldn't help drawing the parallels just because I had also recently seen that movie. So it's just this idea of scissors being something that cuts, divides, separates, when maybe we can actually coexist with both of those parts of ourselves harmoniously.
I am cold and now I seek for a warmth. Stitch your skin onto my skin and we won't be alone. Don't forget who you are even though you're in me. Like a bird in the night, your emotions deserve to be free.
such a battle going on in her head. The action of throwing the scissors in front of her, and this just embodies so much that inner struggle of not wanting to show what's going on in your head, not wanting to show that vulnerability. And I think it's very well showcased in those feelings. And as well, when she is drowning in the river, when you see those images of her just curled up in the river, if you're holding something back, you're going to feel like you're drowning in your emotions because you're not letting them flow freely. You're going to hurt yourself.
You are. It leads to harm. It leads to hurt. It leads to us having self-destructive patterns. It's really interesting how throughout the whole course of this section of the music video, she's doing really repetitive mechanical motions with the scissors. And it's almost like sometimes she's even doing those motions in her sleep or when she's not fully conscious. I feel like that's symbolism for the fact that society is such a well-oiled machine and we're taught to be a part of the machine.
Yeah.
I don't know, might be mostly individual to American society and growing up as Americans ourselves and experiencing the corporate machine to a certain extent. We're taught to be a part of a mechanized system that often feels artificial or inauthentic to most of us. And we're kind of like, oh, this is your lane, stay in your lane, don't challenge the system kind of thing. And so you get into these really mechanical motions throughout the course of your life, or this mechanical routine for the sake of survival, instead of stopping and checking in with yourself and like saying, is this something I really want, or am I allowing myself to express myself authentically in my life? I do like to point out what's happening from like a vocal technique musical perspective and how that feeds the music. One part that I find really interesting is the vocal ornament that she does whenever she says the word eyes. That part. There's a reason why vocal ornaments exist in pieces. One device is putting a vocal ornament on a word that you want emphasized, because oftentimes being numb to your emotions includes like an element of just like emotional blindness or blindness to a part of ourselves. I think eyes is a word that we're supposed to tune into and listen to more closely, which is why there's a vocal ornament on it. This is how you use vocal ornaments tastefully. They have to convey or enhance the emotional impact of the text or the melody. And you see that happen in opera and classical music all the time. Coloratura, which is vocal runs, but the classical music term for it, it doesn't just exist to be show-offy. Sometimes in the Baroque era it does.
Absolutely.
Baroque era. Coloratura is supposed to convey and increase or enhance the emotions that the aria's text is conveying, that the aria's melody is conveying, in a way that kind of transcends words. This little vocal ornament that she does, although subtle on eyes and a beautiful part of the melody, is also something that I think enhances the meaning of that word and how we're supposed to interpret it.
Visually, the way she's choosing to say that we're expressing our feelings is through the eyes. You know, the plants are coming out of her eyes, which represent tears.
Crying, yeah. And that's the sign of an artist, like a well-rounded artist, when everything has a harmonious relationship.
I love this imagery right here.
It's so pretty.
It is so beautiful. And you will see as it develops, she struggles more and more in the water. But this is absolutely very much how it feels to be battling with yourself, trying to hold in all these emotions that are ultimately overwhelming you, because our emotions were not meant to be held in. They're meant to express our humanity. They're meant to express to other people. This is how I'm feeling. Empathize with me.
Yeah.
You are me. We are we.
You can literally like imagine the tears staying inside of her body instead of coming out of them and just like welling up or filling it up. That's why we have the expression, my cup runneth over.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's
one.
oftentimes talking about this type of emotions where you feel like it's so intense that you're drowning in it because you're suppressing all of it and letting it build up.
I also feel like the term cry me a river has been used to shame people, but really, cry us a river.
I mean, part of me is wondering if this entire song is just a really sassy comeback to that. Like, actually,
it fits in really well.
Let's not demean other people's emotions in that way.
Yeah.
You can cry to where the ocean is big, become a part of the river. You can cry, you can cry, you can cry.
She's getting more intense, more unsettled.
The river runs.
now she's allowing herself to really revel in that. The plants start to overwhelm her face, but we will see that it's actually something very beautiful.
This is, in my opinion, the most powerful moment in the music video. Because
Yes.
she's just like, she's dealing with this suppression, these mechanical things, and the number one way to like stop struggling with something in your life that seems like a surmountable obstacle is to change your patterns, to break the pattern, to break things. And I think that's one of the things in life that it takes the most courage to do. I'm currently like coming across patterns in my life that I feel like have to break, and figuring out how that's gonna work. Our authenticity as human beings is our own revolution. One of the biggest ways of engaging in activism, because of the way society, especially Western society, has developed, your greatest form of activism is just being unbridled and authentic in who you are, because that breaks so many preconceived notions of the boxes that society is trying to put you in. And the more people we have that are living their truth and being fully authentic, I truly believe that's one of the biggest ways that the world can move forward.
In a world that tells you that you must do certain things, you must do it a certain way, and if you step out of line, you're going to be rocking the boat. In that kind of world, to be authentic is to be rebellious.
I'm not saying to be like so rebellious that we start like, I don't know, breaking laws or going too far in that direction. There are some boundaries that exist and are healthy and are there for a purpose, but we put too many boundaries that are way too suppressive, and walls that get built, and then we have a hard time relating to each other as beings anymore. We should rejoice in our emotions because they're one of those universal things that just make us all human and united as a species.
Do you miss the silence when it's gone? And you let the river run wild. And you let the river run wild. You can cry.
This is ultimately where I think the video is heading towards. This was Aurora telling us, you can cry. Let yourself cry and see the beauty of your emotions.
You are as beautiful as a garden of flowers because of the diverse, wonderful emotions and feelings and ideas that come out of you. And we have to let those things show on our faces. And this is like allowing the suppressed inner parts of yourself that you keep a secret from society. And that is why Aurora is so effective, is because she's allowed that to become her face in her life, and she inspires others to do the same. People who feel like they don't have that, but they really do. It's just been really hidden for a long time.
Something else just came to my mind. She's actually acknowledging the rose petals falling from the sky, and these rose petals don't come from her emotions, but they are showered upon her because of the emotions that she had, because of the emotions that she showed, because of the garden that is growing on her face now.
Yeah.
This is empathy. This is people showering you with their own rose petals, saying, you know, I know how you feel. I felt these things before, and I want to be here for you because I know what it was like to be alone myself.
It's so funny. I feel like we have the same brain, because I was literally just about to say the same thing. I never noticed before for some reason, or it just didn't occur to me, oh my god, the other petals are not growing out of her, like the ones that are growing out of her face. They're falling on her, and they're coming to her, and she's reaching out to them, and she's taking them willingly. And if we're considering those flowers people's emotions, then that may be like symbolic of the relationship that she wants to have with her fans.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's about you all.
Yeah.
That's really sweet, I think. So that's about her feeling like when she can own up to her own emotions and she can express her art authentically and she's not suppressing any part of herself, she feels like at that point she's in a place where she can healthily take on the emotions of other people and embody the emotions of other people through her music and give that as a gift to us to inspire us to express those emotions and actually allow those flowers to show. That is so... Oh my gosh, I love that so much. That makes me love this music video even more.
Well done, Aurora.
Drink in your eyes. Do you miss the silence when it's gone? And you let the river run wild. And you let the river, run wild.
Do you notice that not only does she have a bunch of petals around her and she's laying in them in her face based off her facial expression, she's kind of in a blissful state. A state where she's at least calm and like
to me it was like a
owning
state
that.
of being overwhelmed by and just completely covered by this, but not necessarily in a negative light.
Like, holy crap, this is the ripple effect I was able to cause. You know, and I kind of expressed in previous interviews that like she never initially wanted like fame, but then her mom was like, music is like medicine, so this is something that you need to share with the world. I think that's so beautiful that she's kind of like coming to peace with the influence that she has, and I feel like that's part of the symbolism of this video. Also notice that there's like trails coming out of petals
tendrils
coming off of, there's tendrils reaching out, and so I feel like that's symbolism for like she's reaching out to more people, but she's also inspiring other people to become those influences.
Exactly.
And so from her and from her base, creating this environment for so many people to express their emotions and let those flowers grow, there's like these little pods of other leaders that are rising up and doing the same thing that are kind of branched off of that. And that's the type of ripple effect, because there's water and the song is called The River, but that's also the type of garden that we can plant in our own lives. Like, every person has the capacity to do that. If we live authentically, we have the capacity to reach the rest of the world like that. And it starts just in our own little community and with our own little following. And us at Opera Cecilia, we take that really seriously. If we can be a force for authenticity and positivity in the world, then we're going to inspire other people to be forces. And then all of a sudden we have all of these healed humans that are helping the other humans heal. And we've created a global movement that way. I think the purest and most beautiful form of arts activism. There's so much about this video that I just absolutely love. And I think especially during the pandemic, this really helped you and I get through some times where we were feeling really big things, and our first impulse was to not express those things fully and not fully be ourselves. And I think we were able to process that. It was easier to process with art like this to sink our teeth into. And the process of doing Orfeo and owning up, like, that's a very emotional show, and how inspired it was by a lot of Aurora's aesthetic work in her videos. All of that kind of helped too. So this was a huge healing process song for both of us as a couple. It's a very special song for us. We will be sharing this with our future children as a way of teaching them about how their emotions are safe to feel and valid and wonderful and morally neutral. When I first showed you this piece, I feel like you were playing it incessantly in the house constantly. What led to you just wanting to play it over and over and over again?
To me, it was so beautiful to be validated and being told, you can cry.
Yeah.
You can cry, you know? I went through a period in college where I had such overwhelming feelings that the only way I felt like I could express them was through music, through nature. So that manifested itself in me finding a tree that I could climb and singing from close to the top. Absolutely was a cry for help. I was looking to see if there were people that would empathize with me and call out to me and invite me to go have dinner with them or something. And it was a very sad time in my life, but ultimately, as I learned to express myself more and allow myself to be in nature more, I grew to have stronger relationships. And you can cry. You can show your emotions. Let other people see who you are. It's scary and it's vulnerable, but you will find the right people who will come to you and love you as you are.
We hope that this video was just as healing and wonderful for you as it was for us to make. We hope you enjoy our content and our insights. Of course, always let us know if you have different opinions about interpretations below. And we love you all. Thank you so much for helping our channel grow. Continue to come and hang out with us if you want.
If you want to see more videos like this, then absolutely press the subscribe button. Help us get into the 4 digits of subscribers.
Yeah.
Until next time, we will see you then.
Yep, we hope to see you all around here again soon. Much love to you all, and
bye.